Wow,
great.
we're so professional.
This is legit.
I know. Look at our lighting, guys. What did Lizzie say before? She goes, Nancy, you're so high tech, but so low tech, so bad at this stuff.
Well, you have high tech aspirations, which
That's
is
it.
half the battle.
That's right. Hi, we are coming to you from Flow Media Studios. This is Hot Stuff with Nancy Rommelmann and
Liz Wolfe.
And today we're going to be talking about citrus. One thing I want to make sure we do, the last time I was on here with Matt Welch, we're like, well, I guess nobody has any comments or questions, but in fact, we just didn't have it turned on. So someone said to refresh. We'll see if I know how to do that. Maybe Liz knows how to do that. But yeah, send your questions. We're here today. Yeah, we're talking about citrus because that's spring.
Mm-hmm.
And I love lemon desserts.
Okay, I love lime desserts.
All right, so we're gonna
we're gonna fight.
We're gonna fight it out. All right, what are the best lime? Oh, I guess we should talk. Yeah. Okay. See, low tech. Now you should talk into the mic too. You probably were. Okay.
Yeah. So my favorite, I made a lime curd tart this morning. I did not bring it because I had to run errands before I came to your house, and it was threatening to rain, and I didn't want all hell to break loose. Plus, I'm pretty sure my husband would be a little bit pissed off if I was not only abandoning him for this many hours, but if I also stole the lime curd tart. But it's wonderful, and I think the reason why it's so wonderful is because it's such a buttery crust. And so the buttery sort of creaminess of the crust perfectly balances out the lime curd part. And you also use lime zest in it. So I really like to use the whole fruit as best I can, not just because of like my hippie Austin roots, but also because that's how you get a lot of the flavor out of it, as well as some texture. So by microplaning the zest and using the juice, it just adds so much dimension.
So yeah, that's a tip. Microplanes. So microplanes, I don't really like microplanes for cheese because I like to have chunks of like Parmesan in my pasta, but a microplane for zest is amazing. And one little trick I have is that instead of like going like, here's your zester and you're doing it on top, turn it over and you just do it from underneath, and then all your zest it's just this chiffonade. I use, when I make a key lime tart, I use that in the crust. I use some of the zest in the crust.
Perfect.
Yeah. So
I actually, before I even knew you, I think I made your key lime pie. We were interacting on Twitter and you gave me the recipe, and I was like, you know what, this lady will probably, well, now that I know you wouldn't think it's crazy, but I was like, this lady will probably think I'm crazy, but I'm just like going to go for it. I'm going to make her recipe, then I'm going to tag her on Instagram. And I'm pretty sure you were nice and friendly and all, but it's funny because knowing you now, the idea of you thinking that's crazy is absurd, right? You're like, send it to me and like ask for more recipes and we can send pictures of our.
Actually, speaking of that, if somebody, I wish, like, I really don't know if we I just don't know how to do this, but
nobody said anything.
Well,
somebody say something.
Yeah, somebody say something. That if it's not there, we'll know. I don't know. Let me know on Twitter. But I'm a big believer in giving away recipes. It's like I don't understand why you would want to hoard a recipe at all. Like you make the world a lesser place if you do that. So
I'm curious: are you a box grater person or a microplane person?
Well, I guess it depends. I mean, if I'm using zest, I'm going to use the microplaner. Yeah. Box grater. I mean, for cooking, I use the box grater. I don't really use the box grater for a lot of baking stuff.
I feel like it's so much more cheese oriented, cheese suited, or I use it for grating vegetables. Like I have a zucchini pasta that I make where I make the zucchini and the shallots. I use a box grater to make those really fine.
Have you ever seen those like spirally things?
Yeah.
Those are kind of good. So I do love key lime pie. And one thing about key lime pie that I highly recommend is that if you've got the ingredients in your cabinet, which you can have at all times, because they are a box of graham crackers, a can of sweetened condensed milk, and a bottle of key lime juice that you can keep in the pantry, that you don't have to have refrigerated, then the only other thing that you need are some eggs and some butter. And someone says, yes, fresh zest or dehydrated. No, fresh. Ooh,
always fresh.
Goodness gracious. Thank you for your question, Stephen. I've never even seen dehydrated zest.
What I use candied peels and candied zest, but I use that often for garnishes, especially cocktail garnishes or for toppings on desserts. I like to make lots of cakes, and I'll use sort of like candied slices. But generally speaking, or sometimes dehydrated ones, I love getting like dehydrated, like little whole key limes that are chopped, that are sliced
delicious.
Up. But I wouldn't use those in the internal part of the recipe, mostly because I find that the flavor struggles to come out. It doesn't pack as much of a punch.
And also the rind itself can get like a little too chewy. I'll tell you something really beautiful. And if I'd had them, I would have put them on what we're about to sample for you is candied violets. They're so
How
beautiful.
do you get candied violets?
Well, you
Tell me about this.
buy them in a store. And
Which store do you get these
oh,
from?
you can get them in a cooking store. I mean, I probably have bought them before, like Williams Sonoma or a baking shop. But mostly it's like a little clump of purple sugar, but it's really pretty. Like for instance, wait, what? Oh, well,
Shall we do it?
yeah, we should do it. So I did make some lemon mousse, and there's some curd at the bottom. So there's curd at the bottom, if we can see here. Well, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a like more of a layer, like a thicker lemony stuff, and then the mousse, which is the curd mixed with whipped cream, and then whipped cream on top.
This is how we should make an OnlyFans that's eating lemon curd.
This is our OnlyFans account.
This is our OnlyFans ASMR.
We're eating lemon mousse. But it's so good.
It's really good.
It's like it's so nice and tart.
It's so creamy.
So that's so a couple things. I when you're allowed to like give a little intro here, which I did, like, hi, we're talking about this today. I actually wanted to put the recipe, but they wouldn't give me enough characters. If you email
Big tech censorship strikes again.
Yeah, what the hell, man? If I put the email address palomamedianyc@gmail.com, or you can DM me on Twitter, I'll send you the recipe. But the one tip I can give you about lemon desserts, and I'm going to see if you agree with this, they almost never put enough citrus.
Oh, yeah.
Like you can see, I have the recipe here, and I changed it to.
Yeah, Yael says take off your shirts.
Yeah, that's the next episode. If you subscribe, actually, you guys, anybody watching this, could you please actually do go subscribe to the Paloma Media channel and watch it. Watch lots and lots of hours, because we're trying to get our hours up too. But you can see here, I changed the egg amount and I upped the lemon juice, and it had like half a cup, and I changed it to 2/3, and I had more egg yolks than whites. I mean, and this is the kind of stuff when you've baked for 50 million years.
I was thinking that when I was making my lime curd tart this morning. I had terrible insomnia last night, so naturally I just like woke up, started baking super early, made a gazillion French presses of coffee. But I was realizing, like, I've modified that crust a little bit because I find the crust is often too dry, and it's difficult with crust because you want to maintain flakiness with a buttery crust. But sometimes they're also really difficult to work with, and at a certain level of crumbliness, you're just totally like wasting your own time. So I realized that I modified that. I also do way more zest in it than the recipe calls for, because I just find that it adds everything, And
I also find a lot of desserts, at least the stuff and I've cooked from dozens and dozens of baking books, and now I kind of make up a lot of stuff. Often have a little too much sugar. Not a lot too much sugar, but it's sort of like the predominant taste they're putting in there is sweet. And sweet's great, but you know how sweet is better? Sweet is better when it's married and smashing up against like a lot of tartness.
Always more salt too.
Oh, salt, baby. Salt is your friend.
Especially with citrus, because that interplay of citrus tanginess plus the sweetness plus a little bit of that salty, like you can't really replicate the flavor of salt. The three things work so well and just add dimension that you can't get any other way.
It's funny, I don't have any salt in this, but I'll give you
sin.
I know, I gotta go. I'm leaving. I'll tell you, if you have any bread bakers out there, if you've ever forgotten to put salt in the bread, which I did one time. I used to bake bread like 4 times a week. I had a bread baking fetish when my daughter was little, and I forgot the salt. It literally tasted like nothing. It tasted like nothing. It tasted like I was cutting into just like some sort of like building material. So yeah, salt is so someone said, I think I told you this the other day, a chef said the only things that don't need salt are coffee and salt.
I think that's true. Yeah.
So everything needs salt.
Though you could, now I'm wondering, could you salt your coffee?
See? We're going to try tomorrow morning.
I don't salt my beer. I don't salt my coffee. Come to think of it, I maybe
What's going on?
in my life.
Actually, I bought this new like creamer for the coffee because I like cream. Sometimes I like it black. Sometimes it was cream. And this one, oh my God, it's so freaking delicious. It tastes like heavy cream and maple syrup. And I'm like, I throw some salt in there. That might be pretty good.
Well, so, this is why it's so sweet Yael can correct us. Is it Jewish weddings, or is that what I'm thinking of, where there's like some sort of significance to like presenting salt to the couple? Salt is incorporated in some way in this like wonderful, like historic, ancient, symbolic manner.
I don't know if it's Jewish weddings, but I know it is. It's like to preserve things, right? And it's life. I mean,
it's so beautiful.
It's life. So we're also, cheers to everyone. It is Cinco de Mayo. I'm having a little baby tiny drink because I have to be on TV in a little bit.
What TV slot are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing something. It's a news show in Chicago, the Joe Donlin Show, which I do a little spot on every Wednesday, usually around 7:24, and I'll be doing that tonight, talking about So this show about baking, right? We're talking about the murder rate in Baltimore and sort of how the governor and the local politicians are banging heads. It's another one of
Mhm.
these pissing contests, and it's like, how's that working out for the community? You know?
Yeah.
And then we might get into, if there's time, talk a little bit about how, in my opinion, the CDC has become totally obsolete. Like at this point, it's just like, there's nothing. It's like, okay, yes, I know you're over there in the corner spouting some stuff, but just really, we're fine. We're fine. So
Yeah. Well, I have to stay medium sober because I'm hosting a clubhouse at 9 p.m. with Mike Solana, who I'm very excited to have on.
tell us about your club. Your This is a weekly clubhouse.
Yes, it's Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. Pacific. Where it's Reason branded, so it's the Reason Room. I'm the host, and I'm working with my colleagues Robbie Suave, Zach Weissmuller, and Christian Britschke. And we sort of try to have guests on each week. We try to get sort of interesting people. Last week we had Derek Thompson out the Atlantic, who was absolutely lovely.
Wow, cool.
This time we have Mike Solana, who I guess is affiliated with Founders Fund. And it's just somebody who writes scathing, wild, biting critiques about tech journalism and really knows a lot about what's going on inside tech world. So I'm really, really curious to hear his thoughts because we're going to be talking about Basecamp and Coinbase and this sort of recent trend of founders and CEOs basically banning politics discussion, gratuitous politics discussion in the workplace. So I'm pretty excited to see what happens. I think we all agree, but I kind of want the audience to fight with us.
Sure, absolutely. I remember when the Coinbase, was that in December when the CEO of
A little
Coinbase?
bit earlier
Okay.
than that. Yeah.
I was very very enthusiastic about his he was very very calm about the whole thing. He's
Yeah.
just like, we this is what we do here. We are that's our job here, and we understand that people have interests, whether they're political or social or whatever philanthropic, and that's great. But we don't do that here. We do our jobs here. So if you feel you cannot work here and not have, if it's social justice or whatever it is that you're interested in, if you must do that at work, then what was it? He would pay them severance and say
3 to 6 months of severance
and
at
say,
least.
we wish you well. And I thought that was a really I mean, I could say it was a brave thing to do, but I don't even.
Gracious. I think it's a
It's
decently
gracious. That's
thing to
exactly
do.
what I thought.
Yeah.
It was like, you know what? We're trying to run a business here, and we know how much noise this stuff can make. And some places want that noise, and that's great. Let them, let them have
Yeah.
that and continue to try to run a business. It can be, as someone who's been sort of peripherally involved in this kind of stuff happen with someone I know's business, it can make a lot of noise. It can be very distracting, and you want to get your business done.
Well, the other thing I'm really curious about is like there's a subtext that we're not talking about here, which is like these companies are friendly and inclusive to, or had been friendly and inclusive to political beliefs, provided they were sort of heterodox, standard, elite, liberal beliefs. I'm pretty sure somebody like me with like pro-life politics, rolling up to the workplace Slack and going apeshit over fetal heartbeat bills would not be super conducive to having a healthy work environment. And so I think it's important to consider the ban on politics at work doesn't just apply to, in a sense, it's a protective measure as well. It applies to everybody equally politically. And so even though it is the liberal employees who I think are up in arms over this, it also means that people like me can't make a workplace into a hostile or otherwise uncomfortable environment.
No, and it really does. I mean, if you work at a company that creates rivets, like you got to make rivets. And a lot of these companies are doing, you're doing pretty sophisticated things. You're trying to gig the news. You're working in finance. Like you do have to kind of concentrate on your job. And I think it's complete. I was enthusiastic about that one. I had actually never heard of Basecamp. I still actually don't. What is
it's
Basecamp?
Like a productivity software. So in the same way like we use Slack, Basecamp is sort of very similar to that.
Okay.
And Basecamp is like, by the way, like the founders, Jason Fried and DHH, are like super candid and intense about pioneering remote work. They've long been at the fore of this. They've been really focused on trying to make the workplace generally quite inclusive and quite friendly to working families and to people who want to seek some amount of work-life balance. And so I think it's kind of funny that formerly heralded as these sort of progressive leaders now they're on the other end of that.
Well, I didn't know about Basecamp, but I did read it when the CEO came out with the statement, and it was like, look, we really thought it was a great idea to give you guys some like credits at the farmers market, or this kind of wellness time, or like a whole bunch of things.
Continuing education stipends.
But it became like a little thing, a little thing, a little thing, and then it's almost like, am I signaling to my workforce that I want you to do these things, because I'm supporting things? And also, once you start doing this, again from experience, like it's never enough. Like it's like, well, then it has to. And then why don't if I don't have any kids? Well, why does this person get some kind of leave thing? And it's like, hi, guess what? We're just going to stop everything. We're going to stop everything. We're going to make our rivets. And
what are rivets?
Rivets are like on a pair of jeans, like those little like.
Okay,
I think
gotcha.
that's what a rivet is. Oh my god! Please, someone tell me. Maybe that's not a rivet.
It sounds legit.
Yeah. And
I thought you were trying to say widgets as like the placeholder word, but I like that yours is an even more specific fashion term.
I actually think I meant widgets, but rivets are gonna right now.
Rivets.
We're gonna. I like the fact that we were actually just gonna be talking about food and
damn it,
here we are. But okay, I do want to stop this. 15 minutes in. I have a gigantic congratulations today to a sushi restaurant here in New York City. It's on Avenue A between 8th and 9th. It's called Rosella NYC. My good buddy, Jeff Miller, is one of the sushi chefs there. I met Jeff, and I think this is a pretty good story to tell. I met Jeff because when I was doing all the Portland reporting on the riots and upheaval and everything, I get this message on Instagram saying, hey, I really like your work. I'd love to have you come into my restaurant when you're back in New York City. And I'm like, all right, sounds good. It's like, yeah, I'll buy you dinner. I was like, no, you're not going to buy me dinner, but I'll come. So it didn't really happen until maybe last October or whatever. Well, it turns out he's a big Reason stan, and we just got on like a house on fire. Meanwhile, his restaurant, which him and his partner, Yoni, who's a fellow chef, and then TJ, who I think does all the managing, they were supposed to open last February. Oh, hi. Terrific time to try to open a restaurant. Well, of course, that didn't happen. Then they were pushed to July, and then they were allowed to have an outdoor, and then they weren't. And I kind of followed him through all of the vicissitudes and the insanity of how he framed it, like what Lord Cuomo wanted. And I used him for some quotes for some of the stuff I wrote for Reason. And I gotta say, these dudes, there were times when I was just like, how can you just do it? But here they are. And today in the New York Times, they are the big giant review by Pete Wells. And it is incredible. I mean, it's through the roof.
That
Including,
must feel so good to have all of your struggles sort of vindicated by finally sort of getting the recognition
probably
that you deserve.
Oh my god! But there was some line about like something so delicious it's like snorting fresh wasabi off Leonardo DiCaprio's back or something, like something wonderful. Anyway, the food is amazing. I dropped in today to say congratulations. Brought Jeff a lemon mousse, and I said, so how's it going? It was 11 o'clock in the morning. They've had 270 people call for reservations today. I told people on Twitter 2 weeks ago, hey, there's this great place you should check out before it gets super busy. Did you guys do it? I don't know. But anyway, Jeff, congratulations to you guys.
Congratulations,
great stuff.
Jeff.
Yeah. And,
should we talk about the other New York Times article that we were reading this morning?
Yes, we should. Actually, which Jeff had alerted me about.
Yes.
So yeah. So why don't you kick off?
Well, you're the one from that
well,
region,
I lived in that region.
Woods.
Okay.
So this is Willow's Inn. Is that the correct name? The Willow's Inn. And it's a chef named Blaine Wetzel. And the New York Times had this sort of what I think they think is an explosive piece about workplace malfeasance, misconduct, sort of like exposing the dark underbelly. The dark underbelly of this. Is it Michelin starred? Willow's Inn, just like a very reputable sort of food destination that's on this island in the Pacific Northwest.
It's on Loomy Island, which is like, I think the population is something like 1,000. This chef heard about this little inn that was there that was available. I think it was in 2011, and just literally, he was 24 years old, sight unseen. He's like, I want to go there. I want to create this to be a destination. And you're offshore, so you have the island to work with. And I guess he just really rolled up his sleeve and with some other people started growing stuff on the island, and maybe raising some livestock. And of course, you've got all the incredible
always raise livestock. By the way, just
this
hashtag always
this
raise
got like cows, horses, pigs.
I mean, not in Bed-Stuy, man, which is Bed-Stuy's biggest fucking flaw. No, I used to have my chicken flock, and I'm very excited to hopefully. Well, so I was thinking about sheep the other day. Matt and I went upstate to go. My Matt, not your Matt. We went upstate to go hiking, and I passed some sheep, and I was sort of ruminating. I might have been smoking weed in the car. I don't know what was happening, but I was thinking about how once you shear the sheep, the wool must smell horrible.
No,
really?
No, my mother used to have sheep, and
Oh.
she would get them sheared. Actually, I never sheared the sheep, but I can tell you it's pretty heavy.
It's dense, yeah.
And kind of dirty, and like you got to do a whole bunch of stuff to spin it. And anyway.
Well, I know the spinning process. I mean, it's all too intensive for me. Like, I'm lazy. I mean, this is the entire reason why I didn't get goats in Austin, because of my editing shifts at Reason. I was on Central Time. I would typically wake up, start editing 7:45, 8 a.m. But the goat milking schedule, like, I'm not. I mean, now I'm an early riser. Back then, I wasn't.
I think this is the first time I've heard someone trying to like work their editing schedule around goat milking, but maybe not.
Jerry Tuchili probably does this shit all the time. He probably has all his livestock schedule with his
shooting schedule. Anyway, so he went out there and he created this. I guess it really sounds like an environment. It's not just that you go in and sure you can go, but you got to get to the island, right? So there's an inn, and apparently it was a big deal. And it's the kind of stuff that, if you've got a little money and you little time and you love food and you love nature and it's all, that's like, it got pretty popular. Like, I didn't know about it, but I guess it was pretty well known.
I've heard about it. I think because a tattoo artist that I know was telling me about different islands in the Pacific Northwest. So I think that's how I was aware of it. Oh, great! Somebody's telling us.
No, I know that
about sheep.
I know that, and then you can actually feel that. Sorry, we're answering something that's on here.
We're talking about the sheep secretion, oil secretion.
You can feel it. I mean, it's very, very, very rich. The
Can you use it in skincare and makeup?
Oh yeah. I remember having a lanolin body lotion.
This is totally the new business. This is the
new.
Okay,
it's all wellness. Anyway, so
I'd heard of it, but it's sort of like in the sort of the types of people who seek out going to Alinea or the French Laundry or other sort of fine dining destinations.
I went to Alinea.
Oh. Were you shit-faced at Alinea?
What?
Were you totally drunk at Alinea?
Okay, I'm trying to think if it was okay. So there's Alinea, and then there's like the one next door where you go for like the 12.
Yes.
We went to the one next door. I gotta tell you, okay, sorry, we're jumping tracks here for a second. It was mind blowing. I took my husband there for his birthday. Some friends, we met us. It's in Chicago, and you sat down, and it was, I think, a 12-course meal, and which sounds like, why would I want that? But no, just go with it. Go with it. And it was themed, right? So like I know there was one that was like Hollywood. I think this one was like ancient times or something. But it is literally one of these all-encompassing things. Like, you sit down, and the table, and the things that are smell on the table, and the way the spoon is, and the way the music
the heaviness of the utensils.
Everything is completely choreographed. You are walking into an environment where you are now in the environment where you will get to interact, and you're also like,
it's like being in a museum. How you just you never forget that you're in a museum, except that it feels relaxing and pleasant, and like you're tended to, you're taken care of, you're waited on, but not in a way that feels stuffy, in a way that feels just legitimately attentive.
Not at all. And there were like little things to read, and they were like different grains. And so our friends that came in from San Francisco, they have like a really nice stock of wine, and she's like, "Can I bring the wine?" And they're like, "Actually, no, you can't, because we are going to pair this." And the pairing of the wine was crazy expensive, but we just blew it. It was like my husband's 50th birthday, I guess, a couple years ago. And it was amazing. So whatever Alinea's sister restaurant is, I don't think it might be Alinea, but I don't think so.
No, I think
anyway.
I know exactly. It's the aviary. Is that what it is?
No.
Okay.
No. Anyway, look it up. It's great. And also, you should go and find the article in the New Yorker about 12 years ago about the guy that started Alinea.
Grant Ashot's?
Yes, and what happened to him. I'm not gonna give you any spoiler, but this article is. Did you read it?
Yes. I'm a Grant Ashot's stan.
Okay.
I'm a fan.
It is a very, very well worth reading article.
Yeah.
It is terrifying, and it's just an amazing story. It's an amazing, amazing story, and the decisions he made. It's an amazing story. So I would recommend about 10 or 12 years ago.
I think so.
Yeah.
One of my big challenges, so I've been to Pool in Mexico City, and I've been to Alinea in Chicago, and those are sort of the only intense fine dining experiences that I've had. But one of the challenges is, so like Matt is very focused, like he's just a cheap guy, generally speaking. Like he's a foodie, so he
Discount
like,
bologna.
so he's a foodie, and so he's into having these experiences with me and going on a date night and shelling out for these things. But he's always like, I'm not gonna go for the fucking wine pairing. And so what happens is we go to dive bars beforehand. Therein lies the problem, people, because if you go to dive bars beforehand and you're drinking for cheap, and you start early, then by the time you actually show up to dinner, you're just a disaster.
You don't taste the food. We had.
I mean, we still tasted it, but it's just we just became, in both of our fine dining experiences, we've become sort of this hot mess, and it's all wonderful and perfect, and I still remember it decently well. But it's like there's a certain amount of moderation that really should happen. So I'm going to Pool in the beginning of July.
How do you spell it?
Pujol.
Okay.
And so my entire goal this time is to be maybe not 100% sober, but like almost,
to start.
you know?
So here's another tip, guys. Drink the good wine first, okay? Because what happens is that you lose your judgment, and after you've had like 2 bottles of wine, it's like, we should really open that bottle we got in Sausalito 7 years ago. And then, like, you don't know it. You haven't tasted any of it. Okay, so let's get back to the Willows.
Yes.
So this story, and I tweeted about this yesterday because there was a story about Andrew Yang in the paper a couple days ago, and they talked to some people in this organization you wanted to say, like, the New York Times spoke with more than 50 people.
Of course.
And I was like, wow, 50 people. I have written probably 20 or 25, like 8,000 word features. Yeah. I've never spoken to 50 people for one. I mean, maybe for my book, I did, which you should go buy, To the Bridge, a true story of motherhood and murder on Amazon. And it's coming out in Russia this month. But anyway, and the article about Andrew Yang was so boring. And so right after I read the Yang piece, I read the Willows piece. And they said, we spoke with more than 35 people. And I'm like, hey, New York Times, do you think that that's somehow like, okay, look, our case is made. We spoke to 35 people.
Yeah, they could be 35 people who all have similar bad ideas about something. Like,
yeah.
I don't know whether strength in numbers is necessarily an idea that we want to attach ourselves to as journalists. I don't know.
Somebody's funny. Sorry, someone said, I don't know, wine from Sausalito sounds pretty sus. Yeah. Well, whatever. Anyway, apparently what was said in this article is that they felt the environment was toxic. Women servers or women sous chefs felt that they didn't advance as quickly as men. Mm-hmm. They didn't give us
allegations of pay disparity. Also allegations of them faking the ingredients and where they're sourced from. They made a big ruckus, or part of the branding of the Willows Inn is predicated on it's all very, very locally sourced. It's all from that island. Right. And basically there are a bunch of people saying that's not actually how they source their ingredients.
And okay, I'm like,
I get that side of it.
Personally, like I don't know. I would like to go in, if someone says to me, you're going to go in and have this experience.
Yeah.
Like, let's say I'm watching a Broadway play. Like, I want to like fall into the Broadway play. Do I need to know that, the actress like has makeup on? Is that going to like detract from my experience? Like they were saying, well, they weren't using the fat from the chickens that they raised. They were using the fat, this like gourmet single whatever source thing from Costco. Like, I personally don't care if it's delicious, but I understand if people,
they should be honest.
They should be honest.
They shouldn't be dishonest if they're going to charge that much money.
And because then it detracts from the experience. Yeah. Well, now the whole experience is blown because no one's going to believe them. There was
the allegations of like poor treatment of women were especially concerning. Basically, they talk about other employees at the inn/the restaurant and how they'd hired sort of local teenage girls who were under the age of 18, and there was sort of a sexual culture of everybody.
But the legal age is 16.
Yeah, exactly. So so they clarify that some of these girls were hired when they were 15, but they didn't actually engage in sexual relationships with people who worked in the kitchen until they were 16. To which my response, being the asshole libertarian that I am, is just like, oh, okay. It sounds like, unless there's an actual rape allegation or sexual assault allegation that is serious and worth investigating, this sounds like the hookup culture that exists in kitchen and bar and service industry type environments, which is a fucking thing. That's a well-documented thing. And it's probably, frankly, maybe not all those situations are fun, but like when you're a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old working a summer job, having sex with dudes who are a few years older than you, like, you have my blessing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, this is okay. Sorry, this is a non-story.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I'm not saying
Parts of it.
all of it is a non-story, but the idea that someone is 16, 17 years, 18 years old, and like they're hooking up with the guy in the kitchen, like they're going out, they're drinking. It's like this is not a story.
There was a line in there about how people who were over 21 who worked in the kitchen were supplying alcohol to those who were underage.
Yeah, because the underage people can't get it themselves.
To which my response is like, good.
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand that there's like this like school marm thing back here saying, look at this. We have to change the entire culture. We have to change the entire culture so that no 16-year-old girl ever is in the position where she could be with a guy and have a drink and have sex. We're going to expose it. We're going to shame them. We're going to put them out of business. And then these 16-year-old girls, they'll never want to do something like that again. What?
They'll be puritanical and afraid of sex, and they won't know how to comport themselves, because some of these experiences, like legitimately, the shambly summer jobs where you drink with people who are a little older than you and there's sexual tension, and maybe something happens or maybe it doesn't, or maybe you overindulge in you drink too much and maybe you don't. That's how you learn your limits in all areas of life. That's how you gain maturity and an understanding of how to conduct yourself in the adult world. Sorry, that's just how it is.
Why is it the New York Times business to police their behavior? And yes, you know what? Sure. Has anyone here that's listening to this like ever had sex and like the next day or like 5 years later gone, I really kind of wish I didn't do that. But who the fuck cares? That's how you learn not to do it.
Yeah. The thing that concerns me from an editor's perspective in particular is that there are some legitimate allegations. Like, for example, there have been multiple lawsuits that
the tipping thing was very problematic.
Wetzel has settled,
right?
Where there's allegations, and courts of law have found out that he has withheld tips and other wages from employees. So he's legitimately stealing from his employees. And that, to me, feels like a separate story about labor disputes that really shouldn't be lumped in with some of the other things.
That is a story.
Yeah,
okay, so
it's an interesting story.
That's a story. And actually, this happens to, I knew a lot of people in the restaurant community in Portland. And this happened to a lot of like people I know that I think it's more complicated than it sounds, but I can't tell you what those complications are. I don't know that it's just like, oh my God, we're going to steal our employees' tips. I think some way the way it breaks down, you can account for it one way or another, and then it turns out you get caught up and something bad happens. Yes. So as an editor, Lizzie, okay, so let's say I'm a writer and I come to you and I say,
let's just imagine you're a writer and I'm an editor.
I don't know. Actually, that would be like what we let's pretend. So I say, hey, Lizzie, I think there's this interesting story out of this cool place, Loomy Island, and I want to write it. I mean, what I would actually do is I would like really talk about the environment, like how interesting and like what kind of people go there. Like, why would you want to be there besides if you were raised there? And that would kind of be interesting. And I think would tell you a little something about how this situation happens. And in fact, did, because early on in the story, there is a woman that said, I heard about it and I just immediately went. Okay, so this is showing you her judgment. She's chasing some kind of dream. Dreams don't work out a lot of the time. Okay, I write this story and then I turn in what the Times ran. What would you say to me as an editor?
I mean, I would say this seems like 5 different stories, frankly. There's the ecological destruction of this environment, which was featured prominently in the piece. There's the fraudulent claims of where they're sourcing their food from, which makes a difference to people in the fine dining community, which can also be lumped into the contamination of vegetarian and vegan options. They're disrespecting people's dietary preferences. And if you're operating at that price point, don't fucking do that, right? Like, there are lots of restaurants that can respect those preferences. The fact that they're sort of fraudulent in a few areas is really concerning. So you have the ecological thing, you have the fraudulent thing, you have the wage dispute component, which to me is by far the most interesting thing, especially in a year where, service industry, hospitality industry people have been screwed over repeatedly. That's a really interesting story. And I just think we can have way more stories on that beat, way more stories exploring that. A lot of people in the hospitality industry don't have a good way of publicizing that information. There is also, I think, maybe a story about the allegations of mistreatment from female employees. But we need a lot more evidence and we need a lot more specificity in order to suss out whether that's actually something that's happening. I don't feel comfortable taking somebody's I didn't advance as quickly as somebody else who was a colleague. Like, I don't know what to make of that. That very well could be the case and it very well could not be. I just don't know, and I don't have enough evidence. And the New York Times, frankly, didn't give me enough evidence.
They didn't give you enough. That part actually kind of bothered me too. I mean, they said something like, 32 women who worked there said that they were promised they would advance to some level. I don't
Yeah.
remember what it was, and like not one of them did, and they saw their male colleagues get ahead of them. Well, if that's true and everybody's cooking at the same level, that's
Yeah.
obviously very strange and a problem. But we don't know that. We there's no way for us to judge whether
Yeah.
Sam made a better omelet than Tara. We don't know. But we're coming up to my thing. We're not going to leave yet, but we can finish this up. But then I think we want to talk about one more thing.
Yes.
Yes.
There is also, I think, the fifth component to this, though, to this potential story that is that for a long time, for many, many decades, kitchens have been shitty, borderline abusive places to work, and that's
Yep.
part of what you sign up for when you enter into that industry. That's why a lot of people don't go into that industry. That's why I did it. I love cooking. I am a very good home cook, and I want to go to cooking school on the side someday at some point, or something like that. But part of the reason why I didn't want to do this full time is because this doesn't sound like an attractive lifestyle to me. Working these types of insanely long hours, chain smoking cigarettes out in the back to try to stay up late, being yelled at by fucking crazy chefs, like none of this sounds
Also,
good to
they
me.
can't go home. You're
Yeah.
on this
Yeah,
island. It's like
true.
a freaking reality show, right? There's no downtime. So of course it's going to become it's going to become messy.
But I think there's a little bit of this tension between like your generation, my generation, where my generation thinks we ought to be able to be soft and we ought to be able to reform yucky systems and yucky institutions and things that keep us out. Whereas I think in older generations, among Gen Xers, there's more of a sentiment of earn your stripes, kid. Like you got to pay your dues. This is what that looks like. And it's tough. I think there's a real tension there, and I'm not sure how to resolve that. I think I'm more on the Gen X side. I mean, as Payment said, you have to pay your dues before you pay your rent. Like, man up, dude, or woman up, if you would like to use that expression.
We've seen that in a lot of places.
Yeah.
What was it? I think it was something. The New York Times put out something about 6 months ago. I wrote about it, talking about like the new thing we were going to do. Like journalists need to feel supported. Like I need my editor to tell me this. I want to talk about it. I want to feel that I'm. And I was like, really? Like because I don't. Like I want to do my work, and if we want to go out and have some drinks later, that's cool. But I do not need, and actually, I don't want anyone to hold my hands because I got to be able to bring the story to you. That's my job, and then that's all.
I just don't think we're setting people up for success.
No.
I understand.
No coddling.
I understand the thought that you ought to be able to work in a kitchen where you're not hazed, where you're not having knives thrown at you. I mean, even David Chang, these celebrity chefs who everybody loves and adores. He's kind of been the subject of a bunch of lawsuits, like pregnancy discrimination related lawsuits. Okay, a lot of these chefs have unsavory, yucky past. But also, I think that's evidence that this is sort of the culture of that industry. And you can focus a lot on changing that culture, or you can have some amount of acceptance of that's the way it is.
I'm fine with that culture changing. And if, David Chang going out of business and Mario Batali going out of business and so many other people that we can name.
A whole different
I mean, they go out of business. And so let's see, you're going to have a new crop. You're going to have the people that were unhappy at Willow's or unhappy at, whatever Batali's things were. They are now the people that are going to be able to open the next generation of dining establishments. And let's see how it changes. If it changes, I mean, it's a very different thing to be the person who is, complaining about something and I didn't get this and I didn't get this as the person who's actually running the whole ship. And it's like people that I remember moving someplace, I think to Portland, it's like, I'm not going to pay $30 for a steak when I can go buy a steak for $18. It's like, yeah, but you're not factoring the cost of electricity and workman's comp and washing the floor and taking out the garbage. It's like when you run a business, there's a lot of shit. It doesn't mean you should be an asshole. Oh my God. And I'm super curious to see what the next iteration of restauranting is. If as a populace, we're going to say, no more. We're not going to take any of this anymore.
You see, I think I'm opposed to the softening in this industry, and then I also look at the softening in like the tattooing industry. We see the same tension between the people who are like, be hardcore, like pay your dues. This is a subculture for badasses, and only tattooers who are willing to prove themselves ought to advance ahead. Versus the people who are saying, no, we want more inclusivity and we want things to be a little bit easier and a little bit less exclusive. We don't want it to be a boys club or a club of badasses. We want it to be something that's accessible to everyone. And I think there's this interesting tension in these two industries. I'm sure there are others that we're not even aware of. But I'm personally on the side of like, sometimes people yell at you. You survive that. You can be resilient. You like I don't know what to tell you. I think it's probably better to err on the side of trying to make yourself strong as opposed to making yourself weak.
I always told my daughter when she was growing up, I said, find people that run faster than you, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what you want. You want to do more. You don't want to do less.
Yeah.
You don't want to be told yourself. So we don't have a lot of time.
Should we wrap?
We should wrap up. I'll tell one quick story about tattooing. So when I wanted to get my first tattoo, I didn't think it was that complicated. What did I know about tattoo? Let's show it's here. It's based on this painting called Parts Per Trillion by Ed Ruscha. I was trying to get it done in LA, and not LA, Portland. I knew a lot of dudes with tattoos. They sent me to all like the badass places, like dudes, and I'd walk in, and all the guys like, no, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. You're not gonna like this and that. Finally, did it? A chick at a vegan place. She's like,
Nice.
yeah, I can do that for you. She's like, I have to interpret it. I'm like, yeah, that's all I want. But like, none of the badass dudes would do it.
Yeah. Well, do they
Weird.
have specific styles? Like, were they gravitating towards
I went to all.
traditional or
I went to like the
Japanese, or-
sea tramp kind of style. I went to
Yeah.
It's like
Sea tramp.
Isn't that a style of
I don't
tattoo?
know. I think it's like traditional or like sailory.
Well,
sailor things.
Okay.
Sea tramp.
No, wait a minute. Sea tramp was the name of a tattoo place.
Okay,
And I thought it was maybe a style too. I don't know. Okay, I guess we're gonna wrap up. We were gonna talk. So next time we will talk about a big restaurant. What was it called? 13 Madison. What is it called?
Oh, 11 Madison Park.
11 Madison Park, which decided, we're going to give you a little teaser, which decided, well, they just announced it, that they are no longer they're going vegan.
Yes.
And this is someplace that has, I think it has 3 Michigan stars, 4 stars from the New York Times. You go in, it's like a $300 and something meal, obviously meat heavy and seafood.
Also featured in a Sex and the City episode where Carrie and Big get into a fight and she walks out. It's most important claim to fame.
Wow,
obviously.
okay.
Michelin stars and Sex and the City. What more could you possibly
Anyway,
want?
I have some thoughts on that, as I'm sure Lizzie does,
Yes.
and we will we'll do that next time, which will be, I don't know, sometime next week. So, guys,
Until then.
and
we'll take our shirts off next time.
Oh,
So
we took our pants off already. You just don't know it. Okay, bye.